Good evening, everyone. I will first introduce myself and then we'll go through introductions for each of the panel members out here. I think if people can just come out here, I think it will be a more interactive one. You can come with the plates and take your seats. I think that will be more appropriate. Anyway, I'll just introduce myself. I'm Lalit Walecha, founder of AVA. We are a CA firm. We based out of Pune, but we have multiple presence. We have presence in UAE, US. We do a lot of cross-border transactions. We help startups with raising capital, helping them with the transaction closing, valuation, M&A, anything to do with international presence, even in Singapore. So we've seen multiple use cases of Indian founders wanting to incorporate overseas or them wanting to coming back, the Ghar Wapsi, basically wanting to reverse flip back to India for IPO and many other stuff. Work with various founders, including AI founders, the native AI founders. Like that's what this session is about. And I think the relevant part of this, why I wanted to be out here, is the India US. That's really excites me a lot. And a few use cases I'll narrate while we are taking through the panel. And I think that's what about us. I'll not spend more time on that. So maybe why don't we start with the introductions, sir? But basically, you.
Hey, thank you. My name is Naveen. I'm part of the NetApp engineering team, and I run the accelerator program. So we sit out of engineering. The whole idea is that how do we add value to our product and services? And just before going in, right, how many of you know what is NetApp? So NetApp is a storage company, right? Think about your UPI payment, right? The whole backend storage runs on NetApp. So it's not only UPI, couple of large banks, right? So we only sell into the large businesses. Now, how do you talk to us when you're a startup, right? So that was always the friction point when we started in 2018, right? How do we start to work with startups? Today, I'll say that the whole NetApp AI chat, which is our chat GPT, right, runs on a startup called True Foundry. The whole 10,000 developers within NetApp, the whole AI ecosystem, right? The MCP servers are all managed by a startup. That's where the program has today evolved into. So we work with around 90 startups, out of which 80% are operational. Majority of them are in the Indo-US corridor, as you rightly said, right? And which is, the right place to be, and more than happy to talk about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, folks. I am Dr. Ameya Mungekar. I hold a PhD in cryptocurrency taxation. That's why the doctor. I'm a partner in a 50-year-old, 5-decade-old CPA firm in New York, and we have a branch office here in Pune. We basically help startups expand to the US. How many founders here? So we are trying to help them. We do incorporations almost one each week, and we ensure that they earn the right USD and bring it back to India in remittances. You're aware the dollar has reached almost 93 to 95, and that's where business is. I often say that it's difficult to arrange a turnover of 1 crore rupees in India, but much easier to get 100,000 in the US. And that's where we work. We ensure there is compliance with both sides of the border, and that's where our firm stands out. Thank you.
Okay, myself Deepak Rohida. I'm a recent implant to Pune. I spent last 15 years in US in Silicon Valley. So most of my views are going to be very biased and very candidly not as aware about the Indian ecosystem as much. But most recently, I was a CFO of a company called Atlan, and before that, I was Druva. In last 6 years, I helped both companies raise close to 600 million in VC financing from Series B to Series E onwards. And prior to that, I worked in 2 public companies in finance, starting from analyst level to rising up to a level of CFO. So looking forward to all the interaction in next few minutes.
Hi, my name is Ketan Pandit. I'm the founder of a company called Be Seen Consulting. We are a fractional marketing firm, and I will hopefully help you balance your perspective from the US because I largely work with companies that build in India and sell to these other markets. Interestingly, I started my career in Persistent 20 years ago. I was here when this building had just come up. So it's really nice to be back, and I'm looking forward to the discussion.
Hi all, my name is Deependra. I think I'm too loud, but I'm with Google Cloud. I lead the AI and startup partnerships and ecosystems for Google Cloud. We primarily work with startups on 3 pillars. One, if you're building in AI, What are the use cases, integrations with Gemini? Even if you're working with other models, it's pretty okay. I think the world of model is changing every week, so we don't want to be part of that race. That's more for the product developers. But the idea is to help you build use cases which customers are willing to pay for, right? And that's where the second pillar comes in, which is on the go-to-market programs. So we help you connect with customers. We have certain programs, marketplace, etc., which we can get into. But a large focus of our programs is on the Indo-US bridge. So if you are a B2B AI company which is building from India, how do you actually build a sales team in the US? How do you expand to that market? How do you connect directly to enterprises, make those pitches and convert those POCs to productions? And there are a few things which I would probably touch upon later part of the discussion. The third thing that I focus on is on cross-Google partnerships. So this is more relevant for consumer, e-commerce, etc. companies. So if you're working with Google Cloud and AI, there can be synergies with Google Ads, Pay, Play, etc. So we enable some of those as well.
Thank you. Viraj just told me that we're running out of time. So what I'll do is I'll quickly do a rapid session. I think that's a better way to do that. So maybe starting with you, Naveen. What are the trends that you're seeing in the AI native startup space? And if you can just delve in a few examples that I think where you help startups in that sector.
See, we sit in a very niche area on storage layer. If you take AI as a whole, right, you can divide it into infrastructure, into storage, and then you can talk about application layer. So we sit in the storage layer, right? For us, the most important thing is how do we add value when we go up the chain, right? We work with a startup called, Encrypt, which is again an Arka Ventures portfolio. What they do is they build guardrails, specific guardrails. The founders have built it. And now they're moving that from an application layer to a storage layer. Think about your data. You had earlier panel talking about, hey, we need great amount of data, right? How do we have the data is curated? How do we ensure the data is not poisonous? So that is where startups like Encrypt come into place. If you look at it, right, it is not always about LLMs. It's about building those point solutions that can add value to the enterprises. And that's where startups like Encrypt, which are built from India to the US, are adding value.
Good evening. If you ask me as a CPA, to build value is to ensure that the firms multiply in their valuation. That's how we work. So if a product sells here for 1 crore, we ensure that it sells in the US for at least 3 crores. That's what a CPA does. So basically helping firms achieve much more. I've had success stories of firms achieving even 20x their growth within 2 years. So this is what we do as a firm. We ensure that they get the right market in the right scenario with the right pricing and the right clients. Thank you.
Okay, so I most recently left my job, but what I'm helping startups mostly in Bay Area is either with fundraising or nailing the go-to-market. That's where bulk of my career has been, either capital raise, capital deployment, or GTM. So, right from seed stage to D stage, that's been. But some of the trends that I've seen in AI, which I think, pointed to the prior discussions, also was more to do with the context that is required for AI to be deployed in enterprises. And hopefully a lot of the people will touch more upon that in future conversations. Thank you.
So my lens is largely marketing, and I work with companies that are either in the 0 to 1 journey or 1 to 10. They're building in India. What I've seen in AI native companies, and this is across sustainability, fintech, food tech, event tech, is that now marketing's role is changing and they're owning 3 major motions, right? One is the speed of delivery. Second is distribution. And the third is making sure that all of this rests on a bed of trust, like Sanjay ji and Giriji mentioned, right? So what we are saying is that you have AI tools does not mean that you will not need people. You will still need a human in the loop. We saw Salesforce fire 5% of their staff, support staff, saying that AI was already handling customer issues, but that backfired in 3 months because AI could not figure out nuance. So that is a decision that is not a production decision. That is a taste, or you will hear this word called taste a lot in the context of AI. So we're seeing that this is changing a lot. And now marketing is too important to be just left to the marketing teams, right? So the entire company is involved in marketing now. So this is what I am seeing from a AI native company's lens.
Yeah, I think we have structured our programs into 3 buckets when it comes to AI. One is, of course, the oldest, which is vertical AI, right? So if you're building in healthcare, let's say marketing, HR tech, etc., we have design programs which are very specific to your industry, and to your solutions. It can be use cases, can be architectures, it can be, which market you should go after and which customers to cater to. Second, I think this change for us last year was a vertical called Gen Media. So after the announcement of Nano Banana, VO, I think the performance of this model is just crazy. And we're just going to launch another model, Nano Banana 4, which is even going to be higher performant. But we're also aware that the cost can be an issue, right? So there's another new version of Nano Banana, which is going to be very competitively priced. So the Gen Media motion is a second beast altogether. And if you are in the creative fields, if you're in marketing, if you're a product manager, some of those programs are relevant for that. And third is the autonomous AI, which is a lot of agentic word that is used a lot, right? So autonomous not just means, automating processes, decisions, data trees, but also how your entire stack is working, right? Right from code gen to building products to actually selling them to customers. So there are various programs built around that. But I also want to touch upon the fact that because a lot of the founders, a lot of people in the room are founders, we also have certain AI programs to help you get started. So if you are looking to build with Gemini, we offer $350,000 in credits, which will actually give you a head start. But after that, as you build and scale with Google and Gemini, I think those are more bespoke discussions, which we can get into one later on.
That's interesting. I would just want to add to that because I have a take on this in terms of what we are seeing in the AI native space when we talk Indian founders. Most of the capital, obviously, what we're looking at is coming from the West. It's still the Silicon Valley, the VCs that are funding most of these Indian companies, and quite a few of them today. And it's been there for a while. It's not a new trend, but the trend has been most of the Indian founders nowadays are looking at having a headquarter in the US, not just an India domiciled company. And rightly so, because I think it's not just the VC capital, it's also the GTM, basically approaching the customer, the value that you get from an Indian enterprise versus a US enterprise that you're dealing with. Two use cases, I'll tell you, two practical cases that we've seen. One of the founders who was from Punjab, he did his graduation out here from IIT Bombay, did 3 startups earlier, and then went on to build something which is in the memory space, where he said that AI doesn't have a personalized memory of your own, right? Whenever you chat to AI, you have to give it a context in terms of what it really means. So it's building the memory layer on the native AI, LLMs, whatever exists today. And it's an open source. So it's an open source project that he was doing. He went on GitHub, put up something, he got the ratings, and then finally went to YC. YC, the requirement is that, boss, if you're a YC funded company, you have to be domiciled either in US, Singapore, or other geographies. So obviously he went to the US. Next raise also that he did a Series A, 24 million is what he raised in the US. He doesn't have any team in India. What we believe is that all the AI companies, what India is going to support, it's very, very contrary to what we believe, right? We believe that India maybe will not be building the foundational models, but will be supporting it and building it. But this was the startup where I said that, boss, you need an Indian subsidy. He was like, boss, I don't need an Indian subsidy. I don't want to hire in India. I will take care of he's a team of 4 people, all US hires. Raised around $24 million. That's one use case. Second use case, I'll go to the other model that one of the other startups was looking at. And maybe I'll have few questions on this to the panel as well. The other use case was this person building something in the voice space. It's a small model. We're talking about the large models. It's a small model, very specific use cases to maybe a banking and financial institution, BFSI, a regulatory environment, or pharmaceutical companies in that segment. Again, India is obviously moving in that direction. A lot of the companies are adopting it. College pass out, 24 years guy, 2 people did a project, did one HTML page, did one model, enterprise, very interested, wanting to take it over, to subscribe to it, wanted to raise capital. What he saw is that there's more capital available on the US front. They formed the US India structure. The founders today are in the US, went on in O1. They have a backend team out here. Raised their Series A. They raised a Series A of about $30 million. They're zero revenue today. Nothing. Both these companies are zero revenue. Still been able to raise 24 million and 30 million. Now, when we look at this, what I believe, I think I have some people looking eyes at me. Why are we promoting US and why not India? I have a contribute to that because the VC ecosystem, again, I will come to the panel on that. The VC ecosystem, US versus India, it's a long conversation. But 3 things happens in the US is that they're ready to take large bets. And that's an ecosystem. That's not just one person. It's the general tendency. You get higher valuations. They don't have exit clauses. All the Indian founders, when they raise Indian capital from Indian VCs, all of them have exit clauses. And the reason is regulatory, because India regulation, it's a close-ended scheme. In US, it's a rolling fund. So that's where the difference comes. So when I talk US, I'm thinking not just VC investment, but also from a GTM perspective. So maybe Ketan, over to you. What do you think from a GTM perspective? What should be the GTM strategy for these AI native startups? Should we just Indian focused US or any other geography, or do you think India is a huge market on its own?
See, I think India is a big market, but that is a very romantic idea, right? We always think that India is a big market. If 5% of that market spends $10 a month, we have 500 crore, 1,000 crore business. But the ground reality is very, very different. Indian customers are very suspicious to begin with, right? They will not trust you and say, okay, go make a mistake. What I'm seeing with these AI native companies are they are failing faster. And that leverage is much more in the US or other markets than in India. In EU, they're protected by the regulation. In the US, there is a lot of cushion. But I'm seeing this change happening with a lot of founders in companies like CleverTap or WebEngage or MoEngage, companies that have made it big in the US. They are giving opportunities to a lot of AI founders based out of India to come and try things out, right? So, it's like, abhi karke to dekho. If it fails, but at least you have an opportunity to do it. So that is something that I'm seeing change. On the funding part, it's still a little gray because, the people who have the money always want to know ki mera kitna isme and what will I get back and how soon will I get back? What happens if it doesn't go through, right? So apologies, there are funds that are very professionally run also, but we're still some ways to getting to the state where US is right now.
Yeah.
So I have a contrarian view on this. So when you take, right, you have to look at what type of startup is this. Is it a business startup or it's a technological startup? When I say business startup, right, you have a business use case and you're using technology to build it, maybe makes sense for you to go to US. But if you are a technology startup and you're building in it, there are VCs funding it. And a couple of startups, example, one went to a YC, got Indian funded, built the solution here, and now they flipped into the US. It was essential because the first money they got was from Indian founder. We also had a similar use case. We had a GraphRag startup talking about building GraphRag for unstructured data, which is the holy grail as far as we are concerned. When you talk about unstructured data and then using agentic AI to train it, right? Today it is the extreme for it if you're able to do it at a perfect go. And we had an Indian founder, again, they raised money in India. Now they've shifted to US. But it's not like there are no VCs of funding it. VCs are clearly funding technological startup. It's the business startups, right? I'm not saying it's wrong. It is just the nature of it. VCs look at how the technology trends are moving, right? So that's my 2 cents on it.
I think I would also want to have some take from Deepak because I think you've been in 2 companies, both on the US front, spent 15 years out there, right? 15 years in the US. Dhruva, which was an Indian domicile company, flipped over to become a global company. So you have some experience in that while this transition was happening. So maybe if you can share some thoughts on that.
Yeah, see, so my take is, I think your question was more specific to GTM and AI, right? So I think what happens is even before you talk about GTM, like who are you solving problem for? So I think that's a foundational question. If you are solving problem for B2B business in North America, okay, so the odds of your success are going to be higher if you go there closer to customer and build a GTM around it. I think Lalit gave 2 examples were 100% true. Most likely those 2 customers, even if they have 0 million in revenue or like nothing, they are solving for a US customer base. Now, the second thing I also want to address is like, I think he said that, how much can Indian customers pay? I think that's another valid question because if you go to a B2B company in India, for example, and you say, hey, I have this great AI product that's going to solve for your customer support use case, for example, okay? And I'll give you a real life example. There is a company called Sierra. It's founded by Brett Taylor. He's a former CEO of Salesforce. That company is now 500 million in revenue and less than 2-year-old. How is it possible? Obviously, one reason is that guy has a big Rolodex. Great. But other thing is like he went to all the B2B companies and they say, hey, I'm going to charge you $500,000, by the way, 500K. I will have my forward deployed engineers in your environment. I have the technology that I've created. I will deliver the outcome. There is no talk about seat. There is no talk about consumption. There is talk about outcome. That's where the AI world is headed. People are going to pay for outcomes. Now, if there is an Indian company that makes a claim, hey, I am going to deliver the outcome in US, then yes, there is going to be funding. You have to obviously deliver the proof and VC investors will line up. And most likely it's going to be the founders has to relocate there. You can't be, oh, again, I don't know, like it might be a contrarian take. I don't think you can be in India and sell in North America. Like it's a binary choice you have to make.
Just expanding on that, and maybe I'll then go to Dipendra for the question. We were helping a company have an acquisition, okay, an Indian-driven HR tech company. I think Deepak, we've spoken on that. An Indian HR tech company, which is again US India, where they have headquarters in the US with an Indian subsidiary. We've been through various cycles, and it was earlier in a platform which was maybe helping hiring. During COVID, obviously, we saw the cycle of layoffs. So they pivoted to a product which is on the HR tech front, which is on skill redevelopment or maybe upskilling on the tech side. Now, obviously, they've grown up to a level, and now they're looking at an acquisition. The investors are okay so that they can go ahead with the acquisition. While we're speaking to certain potential buyers on the US side, two of the questions that they're asking, hey, what's obviously revenue and other numbers, unit matrices, that's okay. How much is your US sales? Okay. And while we're saying, okay, we are doing US sales of maybe 30% of your revenue are US sales, they look at you differently. The valuation, they're ready to talk to you. So I think that's not just on the VC front, but also on an acquisition front. If we were just, maybe they've done few acquisitions earlier, the same company that we're talking to, they did 3 acquisitions, and they were surprised to see that we are able to do 30% sales outside, where the acquisitions that they are done with a in US India structure, most of the sales were coming from India, and they had valued it very differently because we knew the multiples that they had offered, and we were looking at a different multiple. So I think that again makes a difference. And the use case of maybe $100 versus $1,000. I think that's what I think that makes a difference. So I think Dipendra, one question to you in terms of the GCP. Uh, I think the token utilization and consumption is one of the key things from a startup's perspective. And I think few of the programs that you mentioned, what would you advise a native AI startup how to optimize the cost and the usage in terms of when we look at that? Because again, it's building at scale and for global platforms, and the GTM is literally global. So I think the monetization and the use cases, and how do you optimize the pricing part of it from your perspective?
Yeah, sure. I'll address both of those. So when it comes to monetization, what we have seen is that a lot of enterprises have two sorts of budget. One is experimentation budget, and second is production budget, right? So I think a lot of founders do free POCs. I don't think that's the best way to do things, especially in the age of AI. The experimental budgets of enterprises have gone up quite a bit. So I think you should definitely try to do paid POCs, so that takes care part of your monetization. It also shows that somebody has skin in the game, and there's a higher chance of converting that to paid production. On the GTM piece, a lot was discussed. India was also pretty big market. When it comes to B2B AI, if you're building infrastructure AI, if you're building dev tools, right? If you're building observability governance, somebody's building a model, I know there's nobody, then US is a large market. But for vertical AI, right? If you're building in fintech, if you're building in regulated industries, Indian market is pretty large as well. So it depends which part of the, line you are on. Also PLG and SLG, they have very different motions, how you sell in India, how you sell in the US. But when it comes to optimization, token optimization, cost optimization, I think we have seen few things work well. One is, of course, the model orchestration and how your infrastructure is orchestrated. That makes a big difference. Secondly, AI API calls are one thing. Second is your infra usage, which is your GPU, CPU. And third is, your data. So all three combined together can become pretty large in terms of cost. So where everything is sitting, what instances you are using and how your entire architecture stack looks like actually has a big impact on your cost, and it can be even a bigger driving factor of cost rather than what you're building. So I think just being aware of the options available, picking and choosing the right components goes a long way.